All right, folks, welcome back to the Contrarians. We've got another Dark Horse panel episode here. We're looking at Saxon's Crusader album. And as you know, what we always do with these things, we've got a great crowd here, a lot of wise music, Swami's with me. What we like doing with these is this is actually one of my favorite parts of the whole Contrarians different shows we do is when we focus on one album, we get a really good answer to, how good is this album kind of thing, a Dark Horse panel. So yeah, we've got John here, Joe, Butch, Nick, just a little bit to dive in here, or a little bit of background. I'm not going to give my opinions here. So yeah, we're talking about Saxon Crusader. This is February 1984. You know, I've done a Saxon book. What did I call it? Denim and Leather, Saxon's First 10 Years, because I didn't want to write chapters on all those later Saxon albums. Too much stuff. So this fit in a nice, handy book. So I've got that. MartinPopoff.com. Here's a modern picture of Saxon. Actually, three of the guys here were in the band for this 1984 album, right? So that's Saxon. 1983, they put out this album. So this is, I don't know what it is, their fourth or fifth or something like that. And so this is a 1983 album, fifth album, and produced by Jeff Glicksman. I love this album to death. It's my favorite by far, by a country mile. The production is molten. It's crazy heavy. I don't know why people call this a commercial album. It doesn't sound very commercial to me. It sounds like nasty. But yeah, 1984 they produced with Kevin Beamish, U.S. production guy, famed for REO Speedwagon High Infidelity, which is a diamond album. Jefferson Starship's Wind of Change, Y&T Contagious, Leatherwolf, Keel, Contraband. So they do this record. It's another American producer, but they get a totally different sound on this. Next album after this is Innocence Is No Excuse, and they're kind of navigating these hair metal waters. This went to number 18 in the UK, but number 1 in France, Germany, and Sweden. So yeah, their 1984 album, Crusader. Where's my? I've actually got. This is one of the ones I've got framed up on the wall. There you go. Stuck a ticket stub in there, and a eagle has landed 3. So yeah, that's what the cover art looks like. So let's dive in and see what these guys think of this album. Let's start with Butch. Let us know what you think of Crusader.
All right. Crusader is actually where my Saxon story starts. So it, in a way, I was thinking about this week and last night when I was listening to the record again, and it's almost hard for me to be as objective about this record as I feel I need to be. Actually, the whole thing started with I had seen like just a little clip of Just Let Me Rock video on MTV. God forbid they should play the whole thing, but there was a commercial that I remember seeing that had like a little piece of it, and just like the chorus and Biff like kind of shaking his head, and so and actually I watched that video last night. I think it's the first time I saw it all the way through. Thank God for YouTube, and it's just hilarious the faces these guys, especially Paul Quinn, are making in the video. But anyway, it started there. Like I just that little clip of the song got me interested, so I went out and bought the cassette. I don't have the cassette anymore, but I do have the handy. Of course, the Blur, my handy dandy vinyl here. And it's interesting because the CD version I have of it now has a different track list on it. I'm used to this Americanized one, but honestly, like I really liked it. I played it all the time. Now this is also a day and age, 84, when I only had so many cassettes. So and I remember I got this when I was up in staying with my grandparents in Long Island, but I played it incessantly, flipped it over and flip it back and flip it over. And Sailing to America I still love to this day. In fact, I like it so. I normally don't buy these, but I had this back in high school. Then I didn't have it anymore. I must have traded it at some point when I was getting out of vinyl, and I just recently got it in the last few months. I love that cover art there. This is Sailing to America 12-inch, has a little bit of What You Fancy on the flip side. So not knowing much about the band, like I knew they were a hard rock band. I didn't really know the back catalog, so I wasn't able to compare it to Denim and Leather and Strong Arm and the Law and Wheels of Steel, which are and Power and the Glory, which are my four favorite Saxon records. I mean, I didn't know that those were godly. To me, this was like, I was like 13, 14 years old. I liked it a lot. It was, it was more, I wasn't as discerning about my hard rock at the time and metal. Like, I just thought it was cool. There were little things like there was like, bands like this that I hadn't seen live and you didn't get a ton of information about. I mean, they weren't in all the magazines over here. Just little teeny bits of information. So there was kind of like a mystique around them for me. I remember seeing something on MTV News about the tour they were going to do for this record with that had the kind of inside of the castle kind of thing going on with the knights and the staircases and stuff like that, which I love all that stagecraft kind of stuff. So there was just little stuff like that drew me to this band. But yeah, I mean, taking it on its face, like I love Sailing to America. I still love that song. It's still one of my top probably 5 Saxon songs. As Americanized as it is, I mean, it's super commercial, I think, for them, but there's just something about it that I love. I got to see they played half of it in Cleveland on the Sacrifice tour. I was so bummed they didn't play the other half, but that's half more than they normally play of it. So Just Let Me Rock is cool. Real basic, big dumb lyrics. Bad Boys Like to Rock and Roll is pretty good. Do It All For You is the big ballad. I was never that big into that song then. It's good for what it is. I love the cover of Set Me Free. Interestingly, again, like me being the age that I was, I didn't even realize this was a cover at the time until I got into the suite later. So this was the first version of the song I'd heard. Crusader, I think, is great. That's like the closest thing in this record you get to kind of like classic, like big metal Saxon on this record. Like everything else is kind of like more geared toward, straight up hard rock, like let's try to break it in the US kind of thing. I mean, they were big elsewhere. I mean, just looking at some of the chart positions for Power and the Glory and Crusader, I mean, like Power and the Glory it got to 155 here in the US, but Germany, the UK, Sweden, and the Netherlands, it was in the top 30. In the UK it was 15. Sweden went to number 9. Then when this record came out, they make a more American sounding record, more geared towards this market, and it didn't do even as well as Power and the Glory. It got to 174. Meanwhile, in the UK, it's number 18, Netherlands 16, Sweden 15, and Switzerland 18, and Germany 20. So I mean, this is a band that was doing really well elsewhere that hadn't yet, like so many other stories, like hadn't yet broken America. And this was the first real attempt to really bust it wide. I mean, you could argue, some people argue, we were talking about this earlier, that Power and the Glory is a little bit more commercial than I think it's a pretty heavy record. But despite the cover of this being like super metal looking, it's more like just straight up hard rock record. But Rock City on here is again I used to love how that song started. When I was a kid, I'd play it over and over. And then Run for Your Lives is cool. I think that dovetails with older Saxon too. Overall, like I think it's a good record. I don't think it's a great record. My memories of it are it being great because it was part of my life when I was really getting into hard rock and metal. I have good memories of being up at, that summer that I got this up at my grandparents. They launched me into Saxon. I went from here to buying the back catalog. So this is what made me a fan. It's hard for me to, usually when, if I've ever made lists of my favorite Saxon records, I always get stuck when it comes to here. I'm usually able to go boom, 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 boom until I get to this one. And then I'm like, well, it's tough for me. Like, I think their later day records, are probably objectively better albums, especially since Unleash the Beast. All those records are probably objectively better than Crusader, but I can't put any of them above Crusader because it just means more to me as an album. And I think the performances are good on it. Second to last time that classic lineup was together. It's not a surprise that they weren't that big in America, considering what was going on over here with Motley Crue and Rad and those kind of bands. I mean, they were a little bit too heavy for American radio, and they looked, I don't think visors and mustaches were going to get it done. At the time, it affected a lot, a lot of bands. Like I'm reading Tim Derling's book on Y&T right now, and great job, John and Martin, by the way. But like some bands just had an image thing going on that for whatever reason it didn't help them in the United States. So it's a shame. I think the album overall is good. I think it's worthy to have. I wouldn't go so far as saying it's essential, except Crusader and Sailing to America, I think, make it worth having just for those two songs alone. Mm-hmm. Objectively, it's a 4+ record for me. Oh, no, sorry. Subjectively.
How about out of 10?
4 out of 10? I'll have to, if I'm going to be objective about it, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Well, thank you for that. That was awesome, Butch. And just to clarify, Butch's chart numbers are correct. My chart numbers were the metal charts, so to speak, kind of thing when I was saying they were number one all over the place there. But yeah. Okay, so let's go over to Joe Becht. What have you got to say on Crusader?
So I saw Judas Priest on the Firepower tour when it first started in 2018. It was at a casino in Hammond, and Saxon opened up, and they were great. And I'm thinking to myself, when did I stop listening to this band? And it was this album. Now, Saxon was one of the first band, new wave of British heavy metal. So it was Motorhead, early Def Leppard, Iron Maiden, of course, Saxon. I was all in on Saxon. And they had two things going against them on this album. One, it's hard to follow up a masterpiece, and Power and the Glory is a masterpiece. I mean, they got a drummer that we saw as an equal to Neil Peart, and they upped their game musically, and it's just a phenomenal album. Two, this album's not really good. I mean, I just listened to it again, and it like Crusader. So let me get into it. I mean, Crusader is very Saxon-esque, but I could do without all the Monty Python sound effects. Whether it's the intro or during the song with the voice, it's just yeah, exactly. And then it just gets worse from there. They try to sound like Van Halen on the next song, a little bit of What You Fancy, and Sailing to America is a fairly good song. Set Me Free, Sweet's one of those bands you can't copy. Pat Benatar probably did the best job at it, but just leave a Sweet song alone because with the vocals and that guitar sound, don't do it. And Saxon, I don't think is a band that should be doing copies. I know they did Christopher Cross a couple albums later, but I can't get into it. Just Let Me Rock. That's your let's see. Is that your blues sounding, hair metal blues sounding song? Yeah. No, again, and then you get into the happy metal or happy hard rock, and this was a working class band, Denim and Leather. But again, with Power and the Glory, they upped their game, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time. It definitely cracks my top 20, if not my top 10. But I was so disappointed when this was released, and I listened to it, and I checked out after this album. It's just it doesn't do it for me at all. And I listened to it, I revisited it, and that's the reason. But out of 10, I would probably give it a 4.
Okay, excellent.
Power and the Glory is definitely a 9. No, Power and the Glory is a 10 because I listened to this.
Me too.
Yeah, I listened to it after this, and I can go all the way through, and I'm like, wow, what a great listen.
Yeah.
And the earlier albums are just great, straight ahead. Denim and Leather was like our anthem. I was like, holy cow, they're singing about me. We were waiting in line. We're wearing denim and leather.
Yeah. Wicked.
So yeah, this was a really real disappointment. I feel like they could have upped their game. But like I said, it's got two things against it, and the follow up to a masterpiece is hard to do. And I look at Aerosmith's Draw the Line or like Stone Temple Pilots with Tiny Music. Those are kind of lame efforts, but this wasn't good at all. And this is when I checked out of Saxon, unfortunately.
Yeah. Wicked. Okay. Thanks very much, Joe. Let's go over to Nick.
Hey, thanks, Martin. I'm going to start there's going to be a theme developing here, I think, with Butch and Joe and me now. This was also my entry point into Saxon in the fall of '84. And I really liked the album at the time. And I think this is one of those albums where it's grown lesser for me over the years rather than more, as opposed to like Wheels of Steel. Wheels of Steel to me is like a 10. But just right off the bat, this is an album. I love the artwork. I love this exercise because it got me to dust off some of these old Saxon albums. I'm like, hey, I forget about Saxon sometimes. There's some really good albums in there. And I also realized I don't even have some of them. I don't know how that's happened. I think I lost them over the years, but I got to go back or at least listen on the algorithm. But I really like the exercise and that sweet spot that you guys have mentioned, those 4 albums, Wheels of Steel, Strong Arm of the Law, Denim and Leather, and Power and the Glory. That is just 4 really strong albums in a row. And it's hard to beat those. I think this album for me, right off the bat, it's for completists. I think that if you were going to introduce somebody to Saxon, you would go for one of those 4 albums, starting with Wheels of Steel, and then work your way from there. At the time I was getting into Saxon, I loved the album. There was a college radio station within walking distance from John's house that played a ton of Saxon on Saturdays, and I was inundated not just with the Crusader album, but Denim and Leather and 747 and Wheels of Steel. So I got to hear those as a kid, like all around the same time, and Crusader was my first album. And some of the tracks, right off the bat, did anybody bother to get out their Funkin' Wagnalls and look up some of the lyrics for Crusader itself, which is a song they still play live? It's a great song. Anyone bother to look up what a Saracen is or who it is?
Oh, Saracen.
I'll just share this with you guys, and you listen to, and I have a screenshot of some of the lyrics. For Christendom's sake, we'll take our revenge on the pagans out from the east. We Christians are coming with swords held on high. United by faith in the cause, the Saracen heathen will soon taste our steel. Our standards will rise across the land. Now, I don't want Saxon to have a fatwa issued against it, but you may want to look at what a Saracen is, and I don't want a fatwa issued against Martin or the rest of the Contrarians, but I'll leave it at that. But wow, I never knew those lyrics. But and again, Saxon has the balls to play Crusader live. So okay, and I had the honor of seeing them co-headline with UFO several years ago, and they played it, which was great, just great. So I really enjoyed hearing this song, and it appears to be a staple of their set. And of course, I know we're recording this at a certain time. They just announced a co-headlining tour with Uriah Heep next year in the spring. I mean, holy mackerel, that's going to be great. I'd love to see him, but I agree. You can't cover Sweet. This was my first time I heard that song, and about within 6 months I heard the Sweet version, and this is a good version. It's just faithful. It doesn't really do much with the song. I'm a bigger fan of and Joe nailed it, the Van Halen, a little bit of What You Fancy. I think that's kind of a cool tune. I'm not a fan of Block Your Ears, Butch, Sailing to America. I just find that song fits in the groove of these like mid-'80s European bands like UFO and Wasted. It's like the same song. And if you're trying to break America as a kid in America, Sailing to America has absolutely no effect on me. Like you're coming here. It didn't really, it just lost on me as a teenager. So,
but they were coming all that way for you, Nick.
I know.
They were sailing here for us.
Over the seas on some sort of a tall ship. I get it.
But they had to hit the Middle East. They hit the Middle East first.
I know. And then they're going to look for the Saracens. So I overhear. But I felt that, it's funny. Joe mentioned Monty Python, which is perfect. The closest I came to it, though, there is this. I always felt like, there's this like Man of War-esque kind of effects they put on the song. But I still like it. I think it's one of their better ones. Rock City to me reminds me of a bad Ace Frehley song. You want it, we got it. Rock City. I mean, the bar is really low with Ace, but I was like, geez, that's like Ace at his worst. But and again, as a kid, I loved that song. It's just now I'm like, oh, that was like nails on the blackboard when I heard it. But yeah, I mean, so I could go through. What I didn't understand was that Power and the Glory, and maybe this is a production thing, and although I do agree with Joe, I think the songs are lesser. The song "The Eagle Has Landed" to me, I think they're really onto something there. It's an incredibly heavy song at the end of that album. The guitars, it reminds me of a UFO, Love to Love. I thought they were really onto something. And then this album, it's like totally abandoned. Like the guitars are neutered. Everything's neutered. I also felt, and maybe I'm off on this, maybe I just don't understand Saxon the way I should. I always felt that like they could have been a more accessible version of like Motorhead or even AC/DC. And then after Power and the Glory, they went, all right, we're just going to try to appease the American market. And I just thought they had the niche that was great. It was right there for them, and they abandoned it. And of course, they go to Innocence Is No Excuse, and they're getting further away. Rock the Nations is further away. And then I got off the boat I got off the Sailing to America boat after Rock the Nations. They lost me. And then when they did that Christopher Cross song, I'm like, that just seemed absurd at the time. I'm like, what is that all about? Yeah. But so I mean, if you're a completist, you like Saxon, get the album. Artwork's great. There's some good songs in here. I think it's funny on the algorithm they have a lot of the demos. I prefer some of the demo sound. It's like that just dry live sound to me. And some of these songs sound actually better, I think, on the demos. Yeah. So if you're into it or want to hear the comparison, check out if you can the expanded version with those demos on it. And I think there's some added value there. So, but I'd give this album a 6.5. I'm comparing it with those 4 classics that are 9s and 10s and maybe an 8 in there. But so it's good. It's just over time for me, it's just one of those that just hasn't held up as well as maybe I'd like it to. So
nice. Good job, Nick. Very cool. Over to John.
Okay. Well, I'm going to echo a lot of the same sentiments, but I still really dig this record. And WRKC, King's College Radio out of Wilkes-Barre, which Nick was alluding to, that was my introduction to Saxon. And this is the first one I bought. And you can definitely hear the band trying to make it in America here. You got the power ballad. You got the cover song. You got the anthems, which were these great blue-collar anthems for young adults turning into teenage anthems. You went from lyrics like, on the wings of an eagle, you're hoping to fly, holding your hand to the sky, to, you want it, we got it, Rock City. So I liked Rock City back in the day. I listen to it now. I'm like, no. So this album's, I still love most of this album though. And I'm going to go with the sequencing we got in America, because I also have this on this collection here called the Career Years, which has all the albums from the self-titled debut through Crusader, and also has the Eagle Has Landed live album in here as well. And here they have different sequencing. It starts with the Crusader Prelude, and then it has Sailing to America fourth. And to me, Sailing to America is a great album opener. I've always loved this song. And I know it's not as Saxon-esque as the early stuff. And like you guys, I think those albums from Wheels of Steel through Power and Glory, they're all 9s and 10s easy to me. So, but we'll go with Sailing to America, I think is excellent. One thing I really want to talk about, and Joe alluded to this earlier, Nigel Glockler. What an underrated drummer. He is the Dark Destroyer of British drummers. He's fantastic. Love him. Love his work. And I believe he's still with the band today.
Yep, he is.
Nick, when you saw Saxon with UFO, did you see him at Penn Speak?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was at that show too. Yeah, it was on the Battering Ram tour.
And I will say, I'm a huge UFO fan. I think I said on the Contrarians, but I think Saxon stole the show.
Yeah,
he's had a very powerful live performance, and I don't want to cut you off. It's your thing, but when you compare Biff with Phil Mogg, who just stands there,
right?
I love Phil, but man, Biff Byford just commands the stage back and forth, in a big guy, like, oh, fantastic. Anyway.
he got the crowd really into it too. Like I went to the show. Yeah, I went to the show with a friend who was a big UFO fan. He goes, UFO were very good, but Saxon, they had the better show.
They were so good that I went to see him again, which that's sometimes a dangerous thing to see a band twice on the same tour. But I went with some friends of mine because I said, you're really going to love UFO. And Saxon saw him then in Baltimore. And it was a smaller place, same effect though. Saxon just brings it. And it was great about it. You get like 12 songs, the best. Boom. They're really powerful. So if this is an advertisement to see Saxon, it is. I was just so happy they were just a revelation to me. They were great.
Absolutely. Fantastic show. One of my favorite shows of that year. But Saying to Americas, and I love this opener. I love the counter bass lines from Steve Dawson. I love the chorus. Another thing you hear that's very Americanized here is they use a lot more harmonies, which you didn't hear too much of on the earlier albums as much as I loved them. Just Let Me Rock. It's okay. I mean, it's kind of sluggish. I don't like the chorus too much. But back in the day, I loved it. And that's how it is for a few songs on here. Some of them I still love. Some of them I loved at 16, and I don't love them at 52. So Bad Boys Like to Rock and Roll. That can, at first you hear that, you're thinking, oh, it's just another corny anthem. But the call and response between Biff and the band during the verses brings the excitement up a lot. I think it's a cool song. It still resonates with me. It's a good rocker. And like, again, it's not Heavy Metal Thunder, all those other great anthems, I'm sorry, or Wheels of Steel, Denim and Leather, et cetera, et cetera. Do It All For You, I think that was hurt by timing. I'm not a fan of their ballads, but I love this one. I think if you put this out a few years later, this may have done something for them. I love this song to this day.
Yeah.
Excellent song. Biff sounds so tender on here. I don't think Biff ever, this might be what's that?
Tender. That's good. I never.
Yeah, I've never heard that one with
he
Biff.
sounds tender during the
Contrarians first.
Yeah, he sounds tender during the verses, and I really believe it. Go back and listen, people. You'll see what I mean. Or maybe you'll think I'm completely off my rocker, like Nick does, and that's okay. No. Set Me Free. Good version. They wisely didn't try to replicate those zany, sweet harmonies. They just played a higher guitar line to replicate that. It's a good version. It they don't embarrass themselves, and like they just play it straight. Crusader Prelude I always liked. It's a Crusader. I never read that deep into the lyrics, but it is a great song, and it always goes over well live. Little bit of What You Fancy. I've always loved that song. It's this very fast shovel that works very well. Really dig it. Rock City.
John.
Yes.
I don't mean to cut you off, but
Sure.
When this song came up before, and I meant to ask all four of you, is it me, or in the middle of a little bit of What You Fancy, does Biff actually, and I quote, say "yabba dabba do"?
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Notice it. Yeah. No, he does.
Cool.
That's great.
Nice.
So, Run for Your Lives. That's a very good closer. I like the soccer chants at the end. I think they work really well. I feel like I'm missing a song here.
Rock City, Bad Boys Like to Rock and Roll.
Oh, I got them all.
Yeah, did you? Okay.
Yeah, I got them all. But yeah, like I said, they're definitely trying to Americanize their sound, dumbing down the anthems a little bit, trying the ballad, trying the cover song. But a lot of this still works for me. Love a little bit of What You Fancy, Sail to America. Love Crusader. I give it an 8. It's because listening to this again this week, I still dig this album. I just don't think it's one of their best like I used to when I was a kid. Yeah, that sweet spot, the 4 albums that preceded this. So Yep, definitely an 8 for me for Saxon Crusader.
Okay, all right. Well, over to me. What do you think? Okay, so let's go. So, yeah, I love them. I love the mention of both Manowar and Monty Python on Crusader. I totally agree. To me, this is kind of their Achilles' Last Stand or Aerosmith Kings and Queens, where they're trying to force a epic situation out of a lyric and a music, and they, you know, specifically the Aerosmith, they'd never done that before. And Saxon kind of they make this their bread and butter moving forward, kind of thing. But they didn't really do it in the past, particularly. So I've always liked Crusader. It was a new, fresh thing for them. I know it's kind of like a big, cavernous, epic sort of thing, which brings me to the production. So I think Nigel's performance on Power and the Glory is one of my favorite drum performances on an album, period. It's amazing, right? He's also good on here, but Kevin Beamish gives him way too loud and distracting a sound. The tom-toms are this crazy sort of like electronically treated sort of sound. The snare is just boomingly loud throughout the whole thing. So I'm distracted. And I love who mentioned neutered? Was that you, Joe? The Nick? Yeah. So everything else is neutered, and all I hear on this album is drums. It's just drums and some vocals and some guitars and some bass sort of thing. So that's bothering me right away. So a little bit of What You Fancy. Yeah, to me that's their. I just did my last episode of History in 5 Songs was on OTT hair metal songs and how it really traces back to Van Halen. And I'm hearing all that hang 'em high, hot for teacher kind of thing on this song. Don't like it at all. By the way, I guess I'm quoted on the wiki, and my grade is on the wiki, and I gave it a 6, but we'll get to that in a minute. Sailing to America, I bought in. It's like, okay, if I'm going to be this kind of Saxon fan, somehow I surrendered to the idea of that song. I like the chorus. I like the way it's kind of buoyant and everything's kind of moving along up top. It's like I was surprised that I liked it, but I do like it. It's my favorite song on it. Set Me Free. I agree with a couple of you, and I guess I'm disagreeing with Butch here and saying you don't cover Sweet. Do not cover Sweet. I think the production is way too distracting, and they play it really loose. They play it. They don't play it. With that sort of tight urgency that Sweet does. And again, the vocals and all that kind of thing. But yeah, to me, it's just like a languid version of it, a groovy version of it, and it doesn't work. Just Let Me Rock. Now we're getting into more of this sort of like stripper metal bad helix sort of songs. Yeah, don't like it. The toms of Nigel's toms, like just let me rock, bang. It's just so distracting. But yeah, do not like this sort of thing. Bad Boys, like to rock and roll. Again, horrible hair metal with the Straight to Hell and all that kind of stuff, right? Do It All For You. I'm kind of surprised. I think it actually is a pretty good ballad from these guys. The chord changes are pretty good. It's a little thoughtful. I mean, if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, Saxon power ballad," it just seems like a terrible idea, and it is terrible in most cases, right? Rock City, again, just abysmal hair metal. Do not like it at all. Run for Your Lives. You guys didn't talk about that one very much. I think this is their Reckless from Turbo. This is like the redeeming last song on the album. I think it's a really good proper heavy metal song, actually the only good proper heavy metal song on the entire album. Because my other favorites would be, I suppose, Crusader, grudgingly, Sailing to America. Yeah, I'm completely on board. And that's kind of it. Run for Your Lives. Great song to sort of end the album. So I know I'm on there as a 6. I got to go down from that though. I'm going to a 4 on this. What the heck? Wow. I gotta be honest too. I was vacillating between a 5 and a 4, but as I look at it, and yeah, just not liking the performances, the sound, and very, very few of the songs. This Saxon hair metal thing, I'm not crazy about. I just want to mention one other thing. I always find it kind of I'm a weird Saxon fan in that I put Power and the Glory just like miles above those previous 3. And those 3, I always liken them to Kiss albums. It's like the Whitesnake Kiss era, the Saxon Kiss era. It's the simple, gritty ZZ Top, the lighter songs on Motorhead albums era. right? They are great, and they're great songs, and that's how people argue how awesome those albums are, and they all have like 3 to 4 amazing songs on them, right? But the rest of it is White Snake Kiss albums, Kiss albums, essentially. I came on board with Saxon with Wheels of Steel. I joined the Saxon militia right away and the Motorhead Bangers that same year. I can't even remember if I would have moved on to Strong Arm of the Law or went back and got Saxon, which we all know is kind of a weak tea album, pre-New Wave of British Heavy Metal. But love all that early stuff as well. But I would almost be inclined to even go more with that strange debate argument thing of after the Unassailable Power and the Glory. I'm starting to look at all the recent ones mixed in with the classics, and I'm starting to pepper those around in there with Power and the Glory way off in the distance. There's just something completely magical about that album. That
I think it's the drummer. Nigel Glocker took him to another level.
Absolutely,
just like with Rush.
Yeah,
but they didn't follow up on it like Rush did. That's what is really disappointing about this album.
Yeah. So I'll go with a 4. I don't know. Anybody got anything else they want to add?
Nigel Glocker.
Yeah, I know.
He's a beast. Yeah, beast.
Amazing.
Underappreciated.
Yeah.
Go see him live.
Unfortunately, with this album, I think they could have made him more appreciated by putting out a better album here and staying with what they did best.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're navigating the very early days of hair metal. They're almost like panicking that the new wave of British heavy metal is over. Oh my God, what do we do? And like almost every British band, they do not navigate those waters of moving over to the new wave of British heavy metal. So, all right, guys.
Well, sorry, just to add one more thing. Thank you. And by this point, they still sound like a British band. When you go to Innocence and No Excuse, they don't sound like a British band anymore.
Too many keyboards on that record. Holy.
Sorry, what was that, Butch?
I said too many keyboards on that record. I mean, I like parts of that record, and Broken Heroes is one of the greatest songs they ever did. But wow, I mean, they really were pushing by that one. I mean, they starting with Crusader into that one, and there's that 4 or 5 album span where it's like you kind of feel sad for them, how obvious it is that they're, America's like they're trying to chat up a woman that wants nothing to do with them, and they're like, let me try this advance, or let me try this one, and nothing's
I'm glad you brought that up, because the album cover alone on Innocence, that's not, you're not Bon Jovi, you're not good looking dudes, you're Saxon.
Exactly.
You're working class British metal. And keep that to the Bon Jovis and the other crap.
Someone needed to give those guys a mirror. It's like, what are you guys trying to pull off here? So silly.
Yeah, who brought up the visors and the?
It was me.
Exactly. They were never.
Yeah. Wicked. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Let us know what you think in the comments below on this whole Saxon Crusader business, or the other Saxon albums for that matter. You can join our Patreon situation. That gets you voting to see what panels you want to be on. Marco's really good at laying out the whole schedule, and we've got this constant churn of different wise music swamis on all of these different panels and interesting ideas. So we love doing them. But thanks again. Go listen to some Saxon, and actually just go listen to Power and the Glory. Talk to you later.
Thanks.
That's funny.